Identical twins of Reddit. What's the greatest thing you've achieved by swapping places, without anyone noticing? Not exactly intentional. But I was visiting my brother's college campus, where he lived in the dorm. I parked and was headed in, when a pair of female hands covered my eyes from behind. I turned around and saw a pretty blonde girl, to whom I only had a chance to say hi before she threw her arms around my neck and kissed me. She then said, "Is your brother here yet? I can't wait to meet him." To which I replied, "I think you just did." She looked confused for a couple seconds and then turned bright red. When we both got inside, she beat my bro's arm for a solid 5 minutes. Apparently he had never told her we were twins, since they had only gone out for a few weeks at the time. They eventually got married, but the way she and I met gets brought up just about every family gathering. I taught swimming lessons for 3 years. During that time, I had one set of twins in one of my classes, who once switched swimming suits to mess with me. Except I was still learning names of the kids in class. 50-60 kids' names to learn from all my classes, and called one of them what could have been the wrong name. Except it was right, because they had also switched. His face adopted a surprised expression and he exclaimed, "How did you know we switched?" "Because I'm that good." Double quote. I have twin brothers. When they were about 12 or 13, my brother Gio was grounded from the computer. My mom was out, so he decided to sneak on. He was wearing headphones, so he didn't hear when she came in. She caught him. He pretended to be his twin Dante. My mom doubted herself. Called for Gio. Dante, having heard everything, responded, trying to help his brother out. My mom was confused for a bit, but being a mom figured it out. They both got grounded, but she admitted she was very close to falling for it. Brothers. I remember being grounded and having my brother, not twin, swap quickly with me when I was playing video games when I heard my parents coming home, so I could act like I was studying and it was him playing games. Followed up by the classic "I've been studying all day. Can I play a little while now?" Double quote. Not identical twins, but we still get mixed up a lot. Anyways, I showed up to my brother's class to do a presentation. I'm a convincing speaker and he said he'd give me a hamburger. Teacher never found out. I love hamburgers. There's no way this happened. If you're really a convincing speaker, you could have gotten 2 hamburgers out of it. Dude, you're a genius. Not only that, he's Iranian. My twin brother and I go to different colleges. I knew he was coming up to visit a couple weeks after college started, so I didn't tell any of my new friends I had a twin and didn't friend anyone on social media or anything. When he came up to visit, he came right to my room, and we switched for about an hour. It was great. He said he had an in-depth conversation about the fantasy football league I was in, just using cues he found in the conversation. Nobody had any idea. Want a real mess with a group of people? Pull a good twin switch. The reveal was awesome. He was having dinner in the dining hall with my friends. I sat down at a nearby table. The looks of disbelief on people's faces were unbelievable. This one guy looked at him, looked at me, looked at him, looked at me. Speechless. God, I love being a twin. My twin brother and I went to different colleges and didn't generally reveal to the friends we made that we each had a twin. One day a group of people approached me in the street, calling me by my brother's name and asking me if I would like to join them in the pub. I knew that my twin brother was already at the pub, so I said I'd bet them free drinks if I beat them to the pub in a foot race, even if I gave them a head start. They agreed and ran off at top speed while I stood there casually checking my watch and buffing my fingernails on my lapel, only for them to arrive exhausted and find me standing at the bar, drink already in hand. I know it's not exactly an achievement, but it was a fun twin moment. Edit. I've never been given Reddit gold before, so whoever you are, thanks so much. I really truly appreciate it. Hooray. There were twins in my elementary school class one year. The teacher had a rule that if she called you the wrong name that you would get a Tootsie Roll. These kids made out like bandits. For 3rd graders they were sneaky little devils. They switched sweatshirts and desks and spots on the reading carpet, and they would get around 10 Tootsie Rolls a day. Pretty soon the teacher had to check for a distinguishable freckle on one of their arms before addressing them. Me and my brother go to the same college and we are identical. Except I have long length hair while he has short hair. Early on in the first semester, a friend of mine from class that never met my brother saw him for the first time walking around campus. He wanted to say wow, nice haircut. But he decided not to approach me because we weren't that comfortable as friends yet. The next day he saw me again in class and almost had a heart attack because he saw my hair. He actually approached me to ask if I was wearing a wig. Turns out, this happened to a lot of people during the first few months of school, but they were too embarrassed to tell me at the time. My twin brother starred in an original musical written by his roommate that was set in a college food court. It was called Food Court, the musical. I showed up in town a couple days ahead of time to watch the first performance, and upon my arrival, was told I would also be in the musical. Not being much of a singer-actor, I didn't want to do it. But they told me it was a part only I could do. I ended up being his stunt double, and we pulled this huge prestige-like trick in front of hundreds of people where he disappeared from the bottom floor and I appeared instantly on the 2nd floor balcony on the opposite side. I then proceeded with my stunts, which included breaking 2 lunch trays in half with my fists, slicing a giant lime with a sword in slow motion, and dance battling a magic panda. I then disappeared out the back and my bro reappeared downstairs. It was so clean. Most people weren't even sure what they had just seen. It wasn't until the curtain call that people realized there were 2 of us. It was amazingly satisfying. I'm a little late to the party, but I'll still share my story. I took a few tests for my brother in high school in subjects that he wasn't so good at, and he helped me out in classes I wasn't that good at. Overall, I'd say that'd help out a lot. Also another time, when we both had girlfriends, his girl had a habit of not knocking on the front door and she'd just let herself in the house with a spare key. Well, this one time I was having a nap on the couch and she thought I was my brother, and she snuck up on me and reached under the blanket and just grabbed my junk. She got quite red in the face the second after the fact, realizing that I was in fact not her boyfriend. That story is told every chance we get, and he and I still laugh about it to this day. We switched classes once senior year in high school on April Fool's Day. She went to my physics class and I went to her marketing class, which was like a bullshit blow-off class seniors took. She forgot that she had a test that day and I didn't know anything about marketing because I was not taking that elective, but I still got a 92 on her test. That's how easy it was. Her boyfriend at the time, who was also in the class, got her 85. More proof of how dumb Brendan was. When I attended my identical twin brother's wedding engagement, I showed up late. It was a group of about 100 heavily buzzed folks, mostly the bride's side of the family, all having a good time. I had been away for 6 months and had not met any of the in-laws yet, so I had no clue who anybody was. But they knew that I existed. They just had no clue how similar I looked to my brother. So I walked into the crowded house and made my way to the bathroom, only to be stopped by a group of women who I had never seen previously. About 10 or so women stopped me and asked me, "So, how did you propose to her?" They looked at me and addressed me with a familiar tone, like we had already met. At first I was surprised at the question, but realized what was happening. Of course, these drunk fools think I'm my brother. So, naturally, I decided to throw my brother under the bus for funsies. I replied back with a non-coherent response consisting of many bros dudes and kept saying it was super romantic. Dude. I got down on one knee and made our dreams come true. I had never before called an 82-year-old woman dude until that night. I quickly made my exit to the backyard, where the grilled meats and beer were assembled. I thought I had made a masterful ninja escape, but alas, my sister-in-law later found out. That was probably the funnest twin scenario I've had so far. I never got anything out of swapping. But we did get people nagging us to switch places every April Fools and Halloween. I am already tired enough of people confusing us. I don't need an entire day focused on it. Even if we don't switch, we have people staring at our face the entire time to make absolutely sure that we didn't switch. It gets old. People would just call me by my actual name anyway half the time. So what is the point? Haha. I know. When my sister and I went to the same college, half the time people called me by her name anyway. So switching would have made absolutely zero difference and would have been a discredit to my individualness I was trying to give. I hate that a lot of people don't ever seem to bother calling me and my sister by our full names. They just the twins. It really grinds my gears. I want to be called by my name or even the wrong name as long as it isn't the twins. Do you also ever get that feeling people are ignoring you because they can't tell whether they will be talking to your twin or not? I see those stares that people clearly recognize me, but have too much doubt on them to approach me. My girlfriend's grandma was married to an identical twin. During World War II they lived in Poland, and the Nazis came to take her husband away to a concentration camp. He was not home but his identical twin was there. His brother faked his identity and switched places. Her husband came home later that day and found out what happened. He never saw his brother again. Not a twin but have a sister who is 1 year and 2 months older than I am and looks exactly like my twin. My mom even did the stupid dressing identical crap when we were children. I graduated early and went off to college. My sister gave me her ID so I could be 18. She just reported it lost at DMV and got a replacement. The same thing happened when she turned 21. It was pretty f***ing cool. Everyone had their shitty fakes and shuddered at the sight of the swipe machine. But not I. Genetics were on my side those times. Now, for the worst twin story I've ever heard. Being a twin, people tell you these stories all the time. The grandparent of a person I know was a twin. Every few weeks him and his twin would house swap and go home to the other one's family. Have sex with his wife. So on and so forth. The wives never caught onto it for something like 4 or 5 years. Both wives proceed to get pregnant, have children and the like. One day one of the wives mentions something overly important her husband should know, and the twin responds wrong. The whole plot is uncovered and one of the wives gets a divorce, but not the other. In the end the kids kind of don't know who their parent is. The wives got pregnant around times where the twins were actively swapping homes. This all occurred back in the 50s or 60s. Totally crazy stuff, especially when you live in rural Ohio. My friend has an identical twin, and they did a talent show. His twin doesn't go to our school, so no one was aware he had a twin except a few of us. He proceeded to do a magic trick, in which he would escape being tied up completely and put into a black box. The lovely assistants tied him up with ropes, chains, and padlocks to the point where he couldn't move at all. He was then placed in the box and given 5 minutes to escape. After 5 minutes, his twin appeared on the balcony above, and everyone lost their shit. Took him 30 minutes with help to actually get out of the chains afterwards. My choreographer has a twin brother. In the 80s one was an Olympic class diver. The other went into dancing and became a director choreographer. During a national dive meet the diver sprained his ankle and couldn't climb the tower, but had already scored enough to get him and his group into the next round. So the other brother pretended to be him and Bella flopped into the water. The audience thought he was making an astonishing joke about how awesome he was and roared with laughter. No one was the wiser. The diving brother went on to the Olympics, but didn't place. The choreographer went on to be one of the biggest sluts in the theater world I have ever encountered. They're both pretty happy with their lives. Not so much a twin switch, but back when I was underage my brother and I used to get served without ID. I would go to the bar, order my drinks and then go to get out my non-existent ID. Then pretend to be stunned that it wasn't in my wallet. I then start a ridiculous story to the barman about how my twin brother had ID, that we were clearly the same age, asking whether if he saw my brother's ID if he'd believe that I was overage. The barman would never believe me and would call me a liar, etc. My brother would then turn up, pull out his wallet. To a stunned and disbelieving barman. Except he'd forgotten his ID too. At this point we'd engage in a huge argument about whose turn it was to bring ID. By this point the barman would usually believe the entire story and serve us. Makes absolutely no sense. But it worked almost every time. One time. My brother had just gotten out of work and made his hour-long commute. It was night shift, so he was dead ass tired. He forgot to get cigarettes and really wanted one before going to sleep. He asked if I would go buy him cigarettes. I obliged because I wasn't busy at all, and he was nice enough to give me money and let me use his car. And he was very particular that I got him Marlboro Red 47s. I go to the nearest convenience store in this little town nearby. When I say small, I mean like a dozen houses. I roll up, blaring some heavy metal on his nice speakers, and go inside. The guy at the counter smiles and holds up some Marlboro Red 47s. I ask him how he knew what I wanted. He says that he heard me coming. But I say, I don't even smoke. He looks confused and says, but this is what you always get. I started understanding the situation and said, no. I don't, dude. I don't even smoke. He says, Kyle. My brother's name. Quit messing around. I have a laugh for a second and tell him that Kyle is my brother and we're about 3 years apart in age. Not really twins. But totally faked the guy out nonetheless. In college, one of my grad student teachers was an identical twin. His brother was in the same department and taught a class in the same building at the same time. Both of the classes were liberal arts classes open to all majors. So they had a lot of people who weren't overly familiar with the teachers in the department. One day, they dressed similarly and arranged to go grab something from their office at the same time. Only to swap classrooms. One girl was so freaked out by it that she started to cry. Needless to say, the new twin had a definite deer in the headlights look. At school, me and my sister were in separate classes for a couple of years. The teachers could not tell us apart, so mum put me in black shoes and my sister in brown so that they could tell us apart. Now I wasn't very good at English and she at maths, and those classes were at the same time, so we swapped shoes and went to each other's respective class. We only got caught out because mum came to pick my sister up for an appointment and walked into the class and was very startled to find me in it. My uncle and his twin set the world record for a mile run. They both ran track in college, and one time at a local race that was in a wooded area, my uncle swapped places with his brother who was hiding in the woods. They ended up beating everyone else by over a minute and breaking the world record. They eventually told officials and reporters what they did before it put in the paper. I think it's his proudest achievement. He tells it at every family gathering. This isn't exactly in line with the topic, but a boss told me this story about his youth and his twin cars. Back in the 60s or 70s, he and his brother liked to drag race. Some serious money exchanged hands over these races. The way the races were set up, the contenders met somewhere with the cars, looked over each other's cars, agreed on a bet, then, at a later time, met up at the actual race location. What my boss never told anyone was that he and his brother had twin Corvettes. Same year, same color, same interior, and even the same options. Except for one. His show car had the base engine, while his race car had a highly upgraded version. Enough to almost double the power. The trick was, between the times of setting the terms of the race and meeting at the actual race spot, he'd drive back to the house, pull the show car in the garage, and close the door. Then, he'd pull the race car out of the same door, close the shop back up, then head off to the race and win. Every single time. They never once had both of the cars outside at the same time. He said if anyone ever saw, a long stay in a hospital bed would have been a best case scenario. This is not a funny story. My paternal grandfather was an identical twin. He was married to my grandmother for over 50 years before he passed away. His twin is still alive. My grandmother can't even look at her late husband's twin without crying because it's so painful for her. It's a terrible situation for both of them. Her brother-in-law loves her like a sister and can't comfort her because his face reminds her of who he isn't. Pissed off a principal. But I don't know if that is considered an achievement. My brother's achievement would be delaying the inevitable by impersonating me. He kicked a girl on the playground in 1st grade and told the teacher he was me. I got in trouble for something I didn't do. But later when the facts were pieced together, my parents exacted some corporal punishment. The time we pissed the principal off was in 5th grade, I believe, when we traded classes. The principal called my mom after finding out and wanted us punished. My mom asked, so they are both in school and neither was a disciplinary problem? What is the problem here? And left. I'm an identical twin and I'm reading all of these great comments. But my twin and I are different around people, so our public social situation is very different. I am generally more outgoing and he is more reserved. I go out with friends a lot and most of them have never seen my twin. I tend not to mention him until a while later. So basically a bunch of my friends think he is a complete conspiracy. My twin and I aren't identical. But we look a lot alike. On April Fool's Day in 8th grade, we switched classes for the entire day. We had to have a handful of friends and on the switch so they could guide us to the right classrooms. It was difficult for me because he was in a higher math class than I was. During the last class, one idiot tried to snitch to the teacher. The teacher looked at me a good long time and then said to the snitch, "You almost had me," and left me alone. My best man at my wedding was my cousin, who has an identical twin brother. Halfway through the ceremony, my best man started feeling faint, so he had to go sit down. As it neared the time for exchanging of rings, I noticed he had made his way back up. But as I turned to get the ring, it wasn't him. Thankfully, I had made his twin brother an usher, so they were wearing the same tux, and decided to make the switch. Nobody noticed except for close family members. I wish I had planned it that way. My twin and I have swapped places successfully in many situations, but the most recent was probably the best. My brother is an adjunct professor at a local university teaching web design. None of his students knew he had a twin. On the 1st of April, I came in to open the class instead of him. I casually said hi to about 20 students, discussed questions about a project, making it up as I went, and even discussed a student's grade before opening the lesson. No one noticed anything out of the ordinary. About 5 minutes into this, my brother threw open the classroom door and stepped in. He pointed to me and said, "Who is this imposter?" We didn't know how they would react, but we thought it would be a lot louder. Instead, most of the students' mouths dropped open and they just stared back and forth in complete confusion and terror in a few cases. Finally, I broke in and said that I was teaching my class, as usual. And who was this guy interrupting? He dashed up to the front and said it was his class and I should leave. We then asked the students whose class it was, and about half got it right for bonus points and half got it wrong. Either way, we clearly made their day, and we haven't been able to play this trick again for the past few years because it still gets talked about. Identical triplet here. My brothers and I did the trifecta switch in high school. It was for no particular reason. I didn't need my mathematically inclined brother to take my calc exam or anything. We just wanted to see if all three of us could do switch with no insiders involved. We would recruit help of friends to warn others that we are switching in case someone recognized something is up. We also wanted to see if we could not get caught. We ended up switching classes the whole day. 6 periods worth of lies. And we f-king did it. Fellow students knew, but they did an amazing job with playing along. It was a touching moment. And our triplet superpowers only got stronger after that. Not a twin, but heard on the local radio about a decade ago. They asked twins to call in with their best story. Winner to get concert tickets or something like. The winner, 2 twin brothers. Early 20s. One has been dating a girl he wants to dump. But he's a chicken. So he pays his twin something like $100 to meet the girl and do the dumping. The twin accepts. After the dumping, The now ex-girlfriend suggests one last breakup SX session. How can the twin refuse? Twin got the money and a romp. Not technically swapping places, but this is the greatest twin moment for me besides the normal class switcheroos and whatnot. When my brother and I were about 2 years old, we went to get our passport pictures taken. My brother went first and he got his picture taken normally. But for some reason, I was being a little BTCH that day and I got to the point where I was screaming to my parents that I did not want my picture taken. They were not ready to put up with another minute of my nonsense. So they got me and my brother and they switched our shirts without the cameraman noticing. So, in my place, my brother took the picture with my shirt without anyone ever finding out that he was in both pictures. To this day, I still mess with other people to try to guess which twin is which in those two pictures. TLDR, my passport picture when I was 2 years old is one of my brother. Got quite a few of these. In high school I made a bet with my AP physics teacher that we could switch classes on him and he wouldn't notice. He agreed and said he'd give an A on the final if we did. We switched on the day of the final and I had him give him the Scantron with the bubbles saying his name, not mine. To prep for this, I walked into class every day acting confused. So to throw him off my trail. Also rather recently, my brother got free drinks at my wedding. From the bar. Because they were saying the groom drinks free. So he was scoring free mixed drinks all night. My brother and I went to the same college. On one occasion we both went to the library I was studying. He was meeting a classmate for a project. She ran into me instead and I pretended to be my brother. When it got old I went looking for him but couldn't find him. So I took off my jacket and came back to the girl. I introduced myself and explained that my brother was her classmate. And I was looking for him. She said he had just left. I walked away, put the jacket on, and came back. She said my brother was looking for me. I kept leaving and coming back several times. Until eventually my brother finally arrived. When she saw him, wearing something totally different than what I had worn with or without the jacket, she freaked out and yelled, "There are 3 of you." Double quote.